the last 24 hours, we had the US come out with a 10% tariff, and China has now retaliated. Where are we, Michael?
Right now, we seem to be in a case of truth or dare between the president and the Chinese. The president said last night that if the Chinese retaliated, he would impose additional sanctions. Remember, we're at $250 billion now, and the $200 billion going into effect next week. And the Chinese then this morning retaliated and imposed tariffs on another $60 billion in U.S. goods, which puts it at $110 billion on the Chinese side. We only exported $130 billion to them last year. Now, exports are up this year a little bit, so maybe they have a little room. But if the president does go ahead with another retaliation, we're going to have to wait and see what the Chinese would do. The Chinese are calling their tariffs today forced response to U.S. unilateralism and trade protectionism, according to the statement that they put out just a short time ago. And they say if the U.S. insists on further increasing the tariff rate, the Chinese side will respond accordingly. So it looks like we're only, when you ask where we are, it looks like we're only maybe a third of the way or a half of the way through this.
We're talking about thousands of individual goods.
5,700 goods on the U.S. side and just over 5,000 on the Chinese side.
So if the president were to reverse course, and sometimes he can reverse course quickly, what would that mean? Is that even possible?
It doesn't look like he's going to. One commentator said this morning 38 is the key number here because that's the president's approval rating. It's 38 to 40%. And with the midterms coming up, it's not likely that he's going to want to back down and anger his base. Chinese, apparently taking this as an insult to them, don't seem to be wanting to back down either, according to Chinese analysts. So both sides seem to settle in for a long standoff. Jack Ma, Alibaba, said this could last 20 years.
Wow. And we were just looking at some of the products that are exempt from the tariffs, including a number of children's items like car seats, playpens, things of that nature. But as you said, the list of things that are affected is very long. I started to scroll through the 194 pages. I don't think I got past the fish and the various types of vegetables and fruits. Wilbur Ross is on the record saying this isn't going to have much of an effect on the consumer. But looking at that list, it's hard to see that.
Well, this round is definitely going to start having an effect on the consumer, although they exempted some things that may be big sellers at Christmas time before the midterms. They don't want to upset moms by raising tariffs on baby goods. They took off the consumer electronics that Apple makes because people like their iPhones. But there are still things that are on there. Bicycles, for example, 98% of our bicycles, something like that, come from China. Those are going to go up in price, even if bike helmets are exempted. But the biggest thing is what we're starting to get into now is intermediate goods, the things that are brought into the United States to be assembled into other goods or pass through the United States on their way to other countries to be assembled. And that's going to affect supply chains. And that could be where the real impact is.
So walk us through this impact. Let's go back to the beginning of this thing, right? What is this supposed to do to the Chinese? Will it indeed suppress demand for them, or will it just end up raising prices for the end consumer in the United States?
Well, in general, both statements are correct. It's very hard to model all this because of the way people react to tariffs. Now, we have seen tariffs imposed on China for other products in the past. And what do? They box the stuff up, they send it to Vietnam, it gets put in another crate that says made in Vietnam and sent to the United States. So there's all kinds of ways that people try to get around the tariffs.
And there are no measures in these particular tariffs that would prevent something like that from happening?
The U.S., in theory, can go ahead and investigate every shipment coming into the United States and impose the tariffs on them if they want to, but it's just very difficult. What are we doing now with the soybean tariffs that China has put on? We send soybeans to Brazil, they're processed once, and so then they're sent on to China instead of just going directly to China, and we pretend that it's a different product. So there's ways around it. There's also the supply chain issues of, do you buy something from the Chinese or do you buy something from another country, but maybe it's really made in China and sent there, or maybe that country sends something to China to buy, to buy it, and then things move through China. A lot of Taiwanese goods go to China, are put into something that gets ultimately exported to the United States. So it's very hard to model all this, but the Chinese economy could contract anywhere from 0.4% to 1.5%, according to some analysts over there, if the $267 billion additional is imposed, but the Chinese are also expected to employ some fiscal stimulus to keep their economy from contracting too much next year.
China is going to run out of US imports to tariff. So what does it do next?
Non-tariff barriers is what people are talking about, and there's all kinds of things, including additional customs inspections, different rules on what you're able to do and not do in China. One of the things that people are talking about are export restrictions. We talk about these intermediate goods that come over to the United States. There may be things that are exempt from tariffs at the moment that the Chinese could then refuse to send us that would interrupt U.S. supply chains. There's also things like rare earths that China supplies most of the rare earths that go into many products. Those could be blocked from export to the United States. So there are many things that they could do. They could also refuse to approve mergers and acquisitions, stop buying U.S. treasuries as an ultimate case. A lot of things they could still do.